just saying.
Heather, we're about to start. Should grab a chair.
You can throw stuff on the ground if you need to.
You know, from up here, this actually seems like a decent crowd for once. We're doing good.
It's hard to get people to come to cross things.
No, that's a good crowd. All right, so yeah, I don't know if you can do that for interviews. Can I, as an interviewer, have my foot up? Does that work?
Yeah.
Good. All right.
It's okay.
Yep. So yeah, welcome back everyone to Antioch. So today I'm here with Sarah and Lauren, and we're talking about peer-to-peer discipleship. I guess we'll just dive in. Let's see. I'll go with the first question. You guys are RAs. You've gotten to have a lot of experience with this. Do you guys each have like one short story you can share, like an experience?
Sure. I can go first. Okay. So I had a really cool experience this summer. I worked at a Christian camp in Pennsylvania, and there were lots of college staff there. But I got to know the cook really well. Her name is Phoebe, and she's a grad student at Berkeley, and we just clicked really, really well. And so hung out together, but really got to know each other on a deeper level. And so though I was friends with everyone at camp, it was really fun to have someone who you had a deeper connection with. It's like for us, we would talk after everyone else would head to bed, we'd sit and talk a little bit later, and we would pray for each other, and knowing a little bit more of each other's background story, not just the surface level, and being able to have that person who knew what you were thinking and knew what was going on. So even looking across the room and being something's not quite right, and being able to go find them later and be hey, something's not cool here, tell me what's going on in your life, or vice versa, if you're really excited about something, or being able to tell that other person was excited, and just knowing the way the person thinks and ticks a little bit more than just the surface level was a really cool experience, and really encouraging too, because the other people were great at the camp, but there were many times when I was discouraged that no one else would notice, but Phoebe would come up and say something to me, which was really encouraging. Or just knowing if I was upset about something, knowing why I was upset and the background behind it. And so just the benefit of having times of supporting her and helping her, and then times of her supporting me, and it being very mutual and mutually beneficial and mutually enjoyable.
I have an example. It's from this past year. I was in an honors peer mentoring group through the honors program. And for those of you who know Abby Chestnut, she graduated last year. She was my leader, and she's absolutely incredible. And then it was me and 3 other freshman girls. And we would meet once a week, and Abby was very good at being consistent. No matter how much homework she had or how many law schools she was applying to, she made sure that she met with us. And so it was cool because it was Abby, who was older, and I think she's a lot wiser than us, and then the 4 of us who were kind of the same age, same transition. And we met that entire year and got really close. And a lot of the peer honors groups didn't work out as well. I think a lot of that's because some of them were guys and girls, and that can work, but also just for having really personal conversations. It was nice that it was all girls. And so we just got really close. All were incredibly different from each other, but became really good friends. And then I actually got to meet with the 4 of them this past week. And Abby wasn't there, which was really sad, but it's cool to see how that can continue.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you didn't know is actually the girls are best in all girl groups, but the guys always need to be mixed in with girls, So it's a balance. All right, so something you guys can talk about intentionality. Is there any good advice you give to students who are wanting to go into take an existing relationship and start to go deeper and hey, let's start meeting and do disciple each other and push each other closer to Christ?
Sure.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Okay. I would say it's important that if you have a pre-existing friendship, that you should. It has to be beneficial if you want it to go. Not beneficial. Sorry, bad of words. Mutual. If you want it to be a good thing, because if one person really wants it but the other one doesn't, it's not going to work. So when you approach somebody, just make sure that they want to have a deeper, more spiritual, or more where you keep each other accountable. That's a relationship. Both people have to be really consistent in that.
And I think even you have to be willing to ask the person and like do something about it. Because saying like, hey, like I want to have an intentional friendship with you is great, but then what are you going to do about it? Like, what is that going to look like? And if it's going to be like, hey, like I want to like meet with you and pray once a week, and like actually setting a time to pray, or like, hey, like I want to go through a Bible study with you, or hey, I just want to like get a meal once a week and just hear about your life and hear about what you're going through, or whatever it is, like you actually have to do something about it. So not just saying like, hey, like we should do this, and then never following up. And then also like seeing if it works. So like, hey, like we should meet to pray together, and if you meet a couple times and it's just not quite as coherent as you thought it would be, it's not that you can't be friends with that person, but maybe it's worth finding someone else. Like some people do just click better than others, and sometimes you have to count your losses and find someone else.
So going along that line, like when you walk into a room with somebody new, and you're like, how do you kind of approach them with like that mindset of like, you know, I want to further this person to Christ and be furthered by them. Like, you know, how do you start a new relationship with that in mind? Not that it always works out. But.
I think you have to ask someone to do something. Like be, again, using the word intentional, being intentional about getting to know someone, and like if you honestly want to spend time with someone, like show them that you want to spend time with them, and like show them you value this potential friendship with them by giving them your time and your effort. And so not just saying like, hey, we should hang out, or hey, we should be friends, but like, hey, something I do is I have my like schedule with my like free times on it, and like showing them like, hey, here are my free times. When can we meet? Like this week or next week, and like not pushing that back into like something that's hypothetical and in the future, but something that's practical, concrete. Like, okay, like next Tuesday, you and I are gonna hang out, and whatever it is, just like a, hey, I'm actually doing something. I'm not just saying I'll do something.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Saying like, what's your stance when you walk in? Yeah.
Just want to make sure I answer it. I actually have an example from this year with something that happened like that. There's a girl in my hall, and she's older too. Like she's not a freshman this year, and she like the first week of school, she said, "Hey, I want to get to know you better." So I was like, "Wow, this is easy. I don't even have to do anything." Like she just took care of it. And so we set up a time to go on a walk. I was horrible and picked the absolute hottest part of the day, so we were like dying. But we went on a walk, and we both shared our testimonies with each other, not knowing hardly anything about each other. Like that's just really diving in deep. And we've been able to develop that friendship in the weeks since then, which has been really cool. But I think the reason like that's come naturally is because we were so honest and upfront with each other to begin with. And I don't think that works for every single relationship that you have, but for us, like that was really good, just to understand like where the other person's coming from, and kind of their backstory. So.
And I think on the flip side of that too, like when that works, that's awesome. But then also finding like a starting point for someone, like finding something you have in common. So like it's like, hey, like you like playing basketball, I like playing basketball. We should go play basketball together. And then like while we're playing basketball, like conversation might come easier because we're doing something. Versus like, oh, like you're sitting on one side of the table, I'm sitting on one side of the table. We're not doing anything with our hands. We're not eating. We're not drinking coffee. We're just staring at each other. Trying to it doesn't work. It's like walking works. Or anything else is because like you have a goal besides the conversation. So like if the conversation does lag a little bit, or is awkward, if you have something else to do to fill in those gaps naturally. And yeah, and then you can find something you have in common together too.
Yeah, sitting at a table is called counseling. You know?
Yeah.
All right, so which ones have we already done? Oh yes. Okay, so hey, it's professional people. So like also like peer growth isn't the only aspect of discipleship, and I know we kind of talked about this one-on-one before. But like, what's the varying types of relationships you're in, and like, how do you like have a network where you feel like you're able to like pour into some people, be poured into by others, and then also find like mutual relationships with people?
I'll go because I have a very big opinion on this. I think that like for myself personally, if I am wanting to give back to other people or pour into their lives, I cannot physically or emotionally do that unless I have somebody pouring into me. And there's been a lot of times I just got, like I was trying to give so much to other people, but I was completely exhausted myself, so it wasn't doing anything. So I think like peer-to-peer can be really good, but you also should have somebody that can just really pour into you. Like for me, in my junior year of high school, I had a teacher that we would meet with on a regular basis, and she would just like ask me about how my life was and share past experiences that she had gone through to help me with what I was currently going through. And because she did that for me, I was able to have good friendships with people that were the same age as me.
I would totally agree with what Lauren said. Like, it's about balance, and so it's great to have relationships where you pour into other people, but you also need what's important to you. Or likewise, like the balance in like peer relationships. Like, it's great if you have some peer relationships where like maybe you're pouring in a little bit more, but then that means you also need to have peer relationships where you're either equally getting or getting a little bit more. And so it's okay. Like, don't ever feel like it's not okay to be the person who gives more or gets more in a relationship. But then also balancing out that you have relationships where you are getting both. So like, there are definitely relationships where I feel like I give a lot more than I'm ever gonna get, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean that I don't love that person less, or like even that person's not a good of a friend. But it also means I know that I need to go find a friend then who can pour into me, whether that's a mentor, which I think is a great place, but then even like getting a peer friend who's just really supportive and who can support me well where I'm at. And so balancing those two, because I know times in my life I've gone more to the extreme of like peer mentoring and giving to like 7 different people in 7 different places, but then having no one on my level who's giving to me. And like having even just having mentors, but not having any peer friendships that are balanced, and that's not healthy either. And so finding a way to have healthy balance of mutually beneficial, if not with one specific relationship, but at least with a couple that balance each other out. And then you can do the pouring into someone completely and getting poured into completely too. Which can be all kinds of relationships.
Okay, sweet. Now, so how do you see like meaningful relationships developing like on your halls, like, and even ones that like you yourself aren't really a part of, but just like between students there, and like, you know, what do you do to like help them meet or grow? You know, I know like you're not always, you know, yourself like fit for every relationship. You know, like how do you kind of do that networking sometimes and help people out?
I talk about networking. I like networking a lot. It's one of my favorite words. So I think one really cool thing about being a friend is not just being a friend to people who like you know, but also like connecting with other friends. So like if you have a friend over here who likes one thing, a friend over here who likes one thing, like maybe you're not the best fit to be that friend to both those people, but being able to be that connection point and saying like, hey, like I know you like, I don't know, jogging, and I know Johnny likes jogging too, and like if you guys can like jog together, you also both have this interest in like cars or whatever. And it's like maybe while you jog, you can go talk about cars, or even connections about, I mean, anything, but being that starting point, because we all have people we know, but sometimes we don't know people outside of our circle. And so if we in our circle can connect people who may be in 2 different circles, I think it's a really cool experience to say like, hey, you don't have to be friends with them, but this is just a potential where I see an area where friendship could blossom because you guys have these connections. And so being able to, even if I'm not going to be able to mentor you or disciple you directly, I see this person in my life who might be able to, or likewise, like if I know there's someone who really needs a disciple in a specific area, and I can't think of anyone who'd be good at that. Like I would be good at asking someone like Lauren. I'm like, I know Lauren knows a lot of people too. It's like, hey, do you have someone who might be able to help someone who's struggling with anxiety or whatever, or someone who's struggling with this or that, or just wants a friend who's good at whatever, and being able to build those connections and to support each other by maybe not directly being a friend, but finding people. Because at least as an RA, like I know there's people I don't connect with as well, but there's people who I can't sympathize with. Like I can love them well, but I don't understand where they're coming from because I haven't had those experiences. I haven't gone through those things. And so being able to point them in the direction of someone who can directly empathize with them is a lot more powerful sometimes than me trying to force myself to be more than I am, or act like I know more than I do. So that was a kind of tangent. But networking is great. So being able to make the connections, even if you can't support someone, helping them find connections that they may not be able to see right in front of them.
Yeah, building the body of Christ.
Yeah. And that part of that's knowing people well enough to know, like, hey, even if you're not my really great friend, like I know this, and like knowing things about people, even if it's at a distance, can be helpful.
I think this year, like on our hall, I've seen different people see other people that are either hurting or just need someone to talk to, and they'll go to them. And they'll catch it before Sarah and I do, which is so cool. Like, because I think it should be that way. It shouldn't constantly be us, like, taking care of everyone else. It should be, like, everybody mutually helping each other out. And then I think, like, it's important for us as RAs to tell them, like, encourage them, say, like, hey, I noticed that you did this for this person. Keep it up. You're doing a great job. And even though, like for example, there's some girls that can connect better with someone else in the hall than I could. So just like I have to be okay with that, but then encourage them, like they need you, so keep going after that, since you can actually roll with them. And then kind of what Sarah was saying about like it's cool because for us there's two of us, and for people like she mentioned, we talked about it before, but homesick. Like I was really homesick this past year. And if there's someone on the hall that's struggling with being homesick, I'm probably going to be the one that will go and talk to them because that's something that I had to go through and that I understand. Whereas there's other things that I've never dealt with that Sarah has, so I can be like, hey Sarah, you should talk to this person because you'll be really great at that. So.
I mean, yeah, part of that's humility of saying, like, you know what, actually I can't help you as well as someone else can. And, like, Lauren can definitely understand you better than I can too. So. Knowing even like your limits in mentoring or discipling someone, whether that's peer-to-peer or going down and saying like, no, I love you. And again, it's that natural connection. It's like, no, I love you and really like you and we can be friends. Maybe that like deeper peer relationship or that deeper mentoring relationship may not be the best between the two of us, and but there's someone else who you might work better with.
Okay, and then I guess kind of our last question is kind of a second part to this one, but like, you know, when you see like either help start or watch these relationships grow, you know, have you ever had to give advice, or if you had to, you know, like, you know, is there something that like people need to know, like when they're, you know, trying to do like peer-to-peer discipleship, like, you know, maybe like something to watch out for, like, you know, is it rewarding, and if so, why, you know?
I would say it's important. I'll just use the example of depression. Like let's say, like I think networking is a really good thing, but you have to be careful about like what level the people are at. Because let's say there's someone that's really depressed, and you're like, oh, there's another person that's really depressed. They should like get together and be mentors for each other, which isn't going to be a good thing because they're just like both in a really low place. It won't get anywhere. But if it was somebody maybe even the same age that has struggled with depression but has found like a way to get out of that or a way to cope with it, they would be a good mentor for that other person. Just to talk through. I think that's definitely very important, and I do think like mentoring relationships it's played a huge role in my life, and because I've had people since I was young do that for me, it's gave me a desire to do that for other people. So you never know like the impact. Like let's say Sarah is a mentor for somebody, that person may go to mentor other people, and it can just keep going and keep growing. So I think it's really important.
I think too, back to the word intentionality, but like if you're gonna do something, like do it well. And so like if you tell someone like, hey, like I want to pray with you, or I want to be in like a prayer group with you, or I want to do a Bible study with you, like actually setting up times and like scheduling it. Like I know in high school I had a friend who like we went to the same church. We're like we should hang out, and like we should because we're the only kids from our youth group who go to this high school, and like we should be better friends. And we said that for years and years and years. And then finally senior year, we're like, you know what, we're doing this. Like we're gonna, Monday's lunch, we're doing this Bible study book, and we're gonna hang out. And that year was awesome because we were intentional about it. So if you value it, you're gonna give your time and your effort to it. And then likewise, like doing what you're gonna say you do. So like if you say, like, hey, like we're gonna hang out this day of the week, then like, makes me think of Abby and her peer mentoring group. Like no matter how busy I am, like that time is going to be, like I'm not going to ditch you for another family. That time is reserved for this. And then being intentional with that time too, like things like if I tell you I'm going to pray for you, like I'm going to stop and pray for you right then, or I'm going to faithfully pray for you throughout the week, and not just saying things, but actually doing them. Or like if I want to hear about your life, like I'm going to sit here and listen to you, not just ask you a question and then zone out and think about everything else I have to do once you leave.
Yeah.
And so like, though it's kind of a no duh, being genuine and intentional in what you say you're going to do is really what takes that friendship level from like the, oh, we're friends, to like here. Like, I really want to know about you, so I'm actually going to ask questions and listen. I really want to care for you, so I'm actually going to pray for you. I really want to help push you in the right direction, so I actually am going to like read the Bible study we said we were going to do together, or ask you the hard questions that you told me it was okay to ask. And so it does, it takes effort, but it's very much worth it.
All right. Well, let's see. A couple minutes. Does anybody out there have questions?
I didn't know you guys were going to be.
And you're gonna question.
I guess I would have a question. So what are some of the, I guess, like the fears that y'all have had about kind of like peer-to-peer discipleship and the ways you've overcome those?
He should have been my script writer.
I would say like I have a difficult time with like if it's something really personal. I'm very careful about who I share that with. So I think a big thing like with peer-to-peer is realizing like if I tell this person that they're friends with a bunch of other people I know, and if they let that spill out, like it can become a gossip thing. So I think like that's something I've had to learn, like trusting other people, which takes time, and you also like you need to make sure that the person you're meeting with is somebody that you can trust. But for me, like that's been the biggest thing that's been difficult. But
I think sometimes I'm scared about asking someone who maybe I think is a little bit, not even older, but maybe a little bit more mature, or a little bit like, it's intimidating to walk up to someone and say like, hey, like I really respect who you are, and like I would love to have your influence in my life. Like it's not awkward, but a little bit intimidating, like to walk up and be like, hey, I don't even know if you like me, but I really admire you. Will you be my friend and help me like go towards Jesus? And like, but I've never regretted like those questions. And even like one time I did have someone who I asked to be like an accountability partner, and at the time she was like, oh yeah, and then nothing ever happened with it because I would ask her kind of questions and she would just never follow up. And it wasn't a bad thing. It was just like, oh okay, like it's over. But it wasn't even like rejection. But the times that it's worked out really well, I've never like when I do it up with her, she'd be like, hey, like I really admire you. Will you hold me accountable for this? Or hey, like I want to do this with you. They haven't turned me down, and it's been worth it. But getting that like, okay, or even like the friend in high school, like, no, like I really do want to do a Bible study with you. Like I bought us books. We're using lunch on Mondays. And like, it was a little intimidating because she could have said no, but she's like, okay, yeah, you took that step, I'll take this step. So that connected it. Just doing it is terrifying, but worth it. And express too. This is a little different. Like being willing to express what you actually think. Like if you actually want to have a prayer group with someone, like don't just be like, hey, we should hang out. Be like, hey, like I'm really struggling with this in my life, or I'm really having a hard time praying like right now, but I would love to pray with you because I really admire the way I see you connect with Christ. Like, would you be willing to pray with me once a week or whatever? And like not doing any of those weird shades of gray questions of like, you like Jesus, I like Jesus, we should talk to Jesus? Yeah, okay. Those just don't work that well.
I have a question. So, okay, so you guys have those friendships where like you're friends, but like you don't talk about spiritual things, and then like, but you want to, but then you're not sure if the other person, like how they're gonna feel about it. Like how do you, like, especially if you've been friends for like a while, and like it's just never happened, how do you bridge that gap without it being super uncomfortable?
I think for me, like starting with something you're saying, make a lot is vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And so like being willing to make that first step and like sharing what's on your heart. I think it depends too, like if it's a friend who's, like are you talking about a friend who like is a Christian and who's
who is a Christian
okay.
but is really like maybe private about it, or like just doesn't, maybe they don't want accountability, or you know, things like that.
So I think in that, like starting with like being vulnerable and using a lot of I statements, like that's just something you learn in like dealing with conflict with other people too. It's like you don't want to use you statements. It's like I wish you would tell me more about your story. I wish you would pray with me more. You do more I and we statements. Like I really wish that we could share our stories with each other. I'd really like to tell you what's on my heart. I would love it if we could pray together. Things that are like me focused, or even like I really need a friend to pray with me right now. And then you ask me like, would you be willing? Versus like, hey, you should pray with me, or you should whatever. But then being honest too, and like if it's just you want to be on a deeper level, like pointing the friend aside and be like, hey, let's go on a walk. Can I just tell you like how I became a Christian? It might be a little out of the blue. But then, or likewise though, for like friends who like aren't Christians, you want to be more spiritual with, like again, keeping it in the I. And like this is something like part of who I am is what a big part of who I am is what I believe. I want to tell you something about me. will you listen, because this is about, like, not all about me, but like, this is something that matters to me, will you listen to it as a that kind of thing? Or like, even with a Christian friend, like, this is something, a part of my life that really matters to me, but I feel like we don't ever talk about it. Is it okay if today, like, I tell you a little bit more about like where I'm at with my relationship with Christ? And again, like, hopefully, like, you opening up will let them open up.
I agree with what she said. That was really good.
All right,
A
well,
lot to add.
unless there's more questions, I think that is about time. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Shake hands.
Shake hands. I'm mostly professional today.
So professional.
Applause, yep. No, we are.